Welcome back to The Unknown Angler. When I asked my buddy Patrick what's the one fly he'd fish at the Cape, he said you can't go wrong with an all-white deceiver. Today I'm going to show you how to prepare feathers for two particular flies which I'm going to be tying. One is the albicore and the other one is the Deceiver, Lefty's Deceiver. And Deceiver is just a traditional deceiver in white. That I think they have a pretty unique look to them because of the feathers I use. So I'd like to show you the hackles that I use in making these and how I prepare them first, and I'll put this at the beginning of each of the videos that I'm doing for them. But it all comes down to a couple of things. Number one, you don't need to use this particular brand and this particular hackle. I'm showing you what I like to use. You can use any deceiver hackle that you would like to use. I'm going to show you how I prepare them. You can prepare any hackle the same way that I'm doing here. These in particular I really like, and the reason is because, well, first of all, they're the Whiting American hackle. These are the rooster saddles. They're Whiting rooster saddles, and the reason I love these so much is because of these round ends on them, and you can see right there what I'm talking about. There's nice round tips on them. They don't come to a point, and I really like that for the look of the fly. As with all hackle capes, larger hackles are up at the top, smaller hackles are down at the bottom. One of these capes would probably last you a lifetime. Like tying any of these flies is I go in and I'll just pull out bunches of these hackles and stack them up. And the reason is because we use 4 hackles for each one of the flies. And then what I'll do is I'll separate the hackles out. In this case, these are the smaller ones. I'll separate them out into bunches of 2, match up the tips, go all the way down to the base where the base is, and peel off at the base. Okay, I'm going to peel those off there, and what you're left with is the hackle without the fluff. Let's see if we can get that. Nice there, beautiful. The hackle without the fluff. And these, once you've removed all the fluff from the base of the hackles and you have them to the right length, and we do them in bunches of 2s so that you have matching hackles for this. I take them and I place them down on a piece of paper or whatever, curve side up, so the curve is going this way, you can tell, of the hackle. I'm going to come in here with some solar res, this is the thin stuff, and just just take the brush and really make sure there's little to none on there, and just put a little dab right there at the base, just a little bit. I mean, almost absolutely nothing, and just let it soak in just a little bit. This is going to help you make sure that your fly comes out almost perfect. I know this is kind of seems like an extra step. Take the time and do this, and then I'm not sure whether you can see how little I put on there when the flashlight's on it, but basically the flashlight will now cure that and harden it, and you're going to see why I do that when we actually tie the flies. But now I have a match set, and I like to take those as a match set, put them all together. That's one fly right there, and go over here to my nice hairline material keeper, and just be real careful when you do this. You don't want to smash the hackles, but just put them in here. Okay, there's additional deceiver, but we're going to be using the hackles that I prepared at the beginning of this video. All these hackles are the same size. They're not like the albicore. They're not 2 different sizes of hackles. They're anywhere from 3" to 3.5". So these are a little bit bigger, a little bit further up the Cape. Anyway, we're going to start with the either the Mustad tarpon hooks or the SL12S Gamakatsus in the 2/0. I like the 2-aught. I like the short shanked hooks for this. Either of these hooks is interchangeable. They're both good saltwater hooks. I'm going to use 140 denier thread. The reason I use the short shanked is because the hook rate on these is much better, and keeping the hook in the fish is much better too. They don't tend to bend at all. And hopefully we're going to catch some bigger fish here. Now, I've started tying my thread. The one thing you have to understand is, number one, you want to leave, I mean, at least a third, if not a half, a hook length gap in here. By the way, the half a hook length gap on these short shanked hooks is pretty small, so keep that in mind. If you use a larger hook, if you use a standard hook, a 3407, which is your standard hook, that's got an extra little bit of shank length to it. But you need a really good gap in here. You'll see why in just a minute. I don't go beyond the point of the hook when I'm winding back, because you don't want to get into the curve. It's going to pull your feathers down. Now, we've prepared all these feathers with a nice piece of epoxy in the tie-in point. If you didn't watch the first half of this video, go back and watch it. And you just want to bring that and put it. Now you see how nice and straight that is and how it fits in. And I'm tying curved side in this time, not curved side out. Once again, you can match up your tips, you match up the back. If these move around a little bit while you're tying them in because you don't have constant tension on the thread, do not worry. You'll be able to fix it in just a minute because you'll be able to move it around on the hook. And you can see that these feathers have a nice wide base to them, which really helps in the aesthetics of this fly. Once again, I'm not going to go past, I've gone a little bit past it, but not much past the hook point, because you don't want these feathers pushing down, and they will push down. And I'm going to wrap all these in because I don't want a lumpy body on here, but I'm also going to cut them off right where I tied in. Like I said, maybe a half a hook length, but you need a good area up here to work with. Okay, enough of me jabbing around here. Wrap back to the base again. Try not to wrap any further back than that. We are now going to tie in some crinkle mirror flash. Now, this mirror flash is the same we used on the albie flies. I'm just going to take 2 strands of it. This is the thin stuff. It is not, it's crinkle flash, but it is not the thick stuff. It's really, really thin. I would say it's maybe a 1/16 of an inch. And we're going to do the same thing we do every time. You see me do this. Well, if you've actually watched me tie flies, you see me do this a bunch. I'm just going to wrap forward a little bit. Boom. I'm going to flip that over to the other side of the fly. Start wrapping back. I'm going to come back here right at the tying point. I'm going to make sure I pull up on that. Make sure it's hopefully right on the money, right even with the spine of the feather. Come over to this side, grab both, pull them back, make sure it's even with the spine of the feather. Maybe put a wrap in there to hold it. Perfect. Cut it off right at the base. Those are going to track really well. Right at the base of the feather, I should have said. Pull back, cut off right at the base of the feather. Now at this point, what you're going to have is you're going to have two very nice feathers. They're going to be tracking right even with each other. 4 actually feathers. And now we're going to add a little bit of Bill's body braid. This is just so that if you do get to peek through the the bucktail that we're tying in, and you might get a little peek through it when you tie it in, because we're not going to tie in big clumps of bucktail. We're going to tie it in relatively sparse. That there's a little underbody there that gives it a little shine. I'm going to come all the way up to where I tied off here. Once again, I can't overemphasize this enough. You need a lot of room at the head here to tie a nice bucktail, tie the bucktail in so that you have a nice head. I can't overemphasize that enough. If you're tying all the way to the very front of the hook here, then you are way too far, and this is not going to work for you. Okay, so now you have a body of Bill's body braid. Going to tie that off. Going to run some thread up to the front of the hook so we have a thread base now, and then run it back to where I tied off the Bill's body braid. And now we're going to go with some bucktail. I could write a whole video, do a whole video on how to choose bucktail for flies. But if you just buy a patch of saltwater bucktail, and you're going to have to feel your way through this one takes experience. What you're looking for is bucktail that doesn't compress too much and, you know, doesn't do this and flop out. The other thing too is, for those of you that tie deceivers, you need much less bucktail on the bottom than you do on the top. And the reason for that is that helps your fly to keel. The bucktail needs to extend back about halfway into the feathers. Going to then cut the bucktail off. Whoop, sorry about that. Place the bucktail on there. Take a few wraps forward. Make sure it's even around it. Maybe take your bodkin, put it on the other side of the hook. And we've got a pretty even, tie in there, which is good. All right. Now we're going to flip this over. We're going to do the same thing on this side. And I don't double the amount of bucktail that's on the top side. I just tie in probably half as much again as I tied in on the bottom. So, depending on whether you want to make sparse deceivers or whether you want to make, you know, full head deceivers, depending on what you're trying to imitate here, I like kind of more of a full body deceiver. But always tie in way more bucktail on the top than you did on the bottom. Measure it up. Get about halfway down the tail feather. There you go. Now, put some good wraps in there. Make sure it's nicely spread out, and then you can come in here and you can cut away from the eye, because what we're about to do next is going to make sure that none of this going to make this fly bomb proof. And by the way, I like to trim it before I put it on, and then trim it again once it's on there. I don't like to try to lift up and trim it once I have it in place. That seems to move all your thread around. Once you have that, make a couple of wraps and make sure you have it right where you want it, because once again, after you do this next step, there's no going back. And take and put a dab of, this is Loctite super glue. Put a good generous drop on there so you can actually see it on both sides. This doesn't dry too quickly, so what we want to do now is we're going to wrap this in. We're going to start wrapping forward. And you could tell by the way it moved around there that I'm putting a lot of pressure on here, trying to get this down pat. Once I've gotten a couple of wraps in and I see that drop starting to form, I go in there and I wipe off the excess. There you have it. Now, I'm going to take some peacock herl. Buy yourself a pack of 6-inch, 5 or 6-inch long peacock herl. They come in all different sizes, so you have to go for the longer peacock herl. Match up the tips. No, it's not matched up real well. Match up the tips. You want to tie just a little bit longer than the actual bucktail. Just a little bit, not much. And you cut that off. And I like to use these Semperfi jungle cocks. These are synthetic jungle cock eyes. This is strictly a beautification step. This does not help with its fishing or anything else. I don't believe these jungle cock eyes add anything that fish find. And I think that probably Patrick up at the Cape would tell you that that these eyes come off after 3 or 4 fish anyway, and the fly still fishes just great. I don't think anybody's ever taken one of these flies off and stopped fishing it because the eyes fell off. Likewise, if you want to put tab eyes on here, those will work fine too, but this is more of a traditional with the jungle cock. Makes for a really nice looking fly. Now, once we've reached that, we can finish off by tying a very neat head. And as you can see, even though I used a half a hook shank's length or a third or so, that's not how big the head ended up being. The head ended up being, if you're looking at this, relatively small in comparison to the rest of the fly. So you really do need to leave a good portion of the hook to tie in the head and the... Also, it will make a bomb-proof fly for you. if you don't put enough wraps of thread around that bucktail, everybody knows what I'm talking about that's ever tied one of these, the bucktail will come out of there. And that's why I put the super glue on there, because it makes it absolutely bomb-proof as far as actually the head moving around, and also the bucktail coming off. 6 turns for a whip finish. And we'll take a look at that. Make sure everything's in place before I go and epoxy the head here. That looks pretty good. I don't hold back with these. I put a generous amount of epoxy on the head. There we go. Hit it with the flashlight. And we're done. And if you take a look at the top of that fly and the bottom of that fly, the silhouette on that thing is beautiful. There you go. See you next time.